Spend some time on these various coordination exercises. Of course, stalls and spins would be kind of the meat and potatoes, because that's the most common scenario the pilots can find themselves in, inadvertently stalling the airplane. And we do just some very simple things. And the people that I was flying with today, one very fundamental thing is we do some stalls not looking over the nose of the airplane. We'll do a stall entry, stall break, stall recovery, looking out at the wing, or looking down at the people in the lake. Or in the case today, I put my finger on the roof and say, stare at my finger, do a stall entry, break, and recovery. So we learn to do the stall and react to it by feel. Do you really need to see anything? If I put you in an airplane and put the yoke in your hand and say, and put a blindfold on you and say to you, you're in a stall. You need to see anything to know what you have to do with the yoke. Where does the yoke have to go? Forward. You need to see anything to know where that is? Push it forward, right? So just some fundamental expansion of the same old way of doing stall exercises. And it really proves in the end that we sense a whole lot more, we know a whole lot more than we give ourselves credit for. A lot of pilots think that, oh, it's going to be really hard looking out at the wings. I've never done that before. But in some ways, there's a lot more information looking out at the wing than there is looking over the nose. Take a departure stall, for example. When you do a departure stall, power on stall, on a day like today, what do you see out over the nose? Face full of sky. How do you know where you are? I certainly don't know where I am when I'm just staring at the blue sky up there. And unfortunately, the instruments are lagging indicators, aren't they? They don't give us real-time information. So the instruments are lagging. I can't see anything up there. No wonder why we're scared, right? But if I look out at the wing and I see the wing on the horizon, I know exactly where I am. I can tell if it's too high on the horizon, if it's too low, if it's yawing fore and aft. A lot of information out there. How many people have done aerobatics in here before? Okay, a couple people. One of the things you learn in aerobatics is anytime you're going up, you look out at the wing. So you know where you are. How do you know when you're at the top of the loop? Well, you look at the wing. When the wing's upside down, I can look over the nose again, because I'm there. Otherwise, you can get crooked because you have this blank visual field out in front of you. So just some fundamental things with stalls and spins. Of course, inverted attitudes, rolling upsets. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go on this evening. Control and power plant failure scenarios. Anybody in here ever have the ailerons get stuck? Or a split flap? Or a broken elevator cable? No? Just the one in the back? Okay. Well, how do we deal with the airplane in this configuration? Alternate means of controlling the airplane. Power plant failure scenario. Well, the most common one is with our instructors, they just pull the power and you got to glide, right? Well, what if the throttle linkage breaks and the power is stuck on? How do we deal with that? And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment as well. And then, of course, the off-airport landing scenarios. Picking your spot, judging the wind, and everything else along those lines. So the training objectives, of course, to minimize the compounding of errors. When you read accident reports, we find that accidents don't occur because of any one thing the pilot did, but because of a series of things the pilot did that resulted in perhaps poor judgment or things that contributed to the unusual attitude. And if we can recognize the warning signs and break it at that point, then we don't have to go into a full-blown unusual attitude and conjure up one of the two full-blown unusual attitude recovery procedures. Identify the warning signs. One of the simplest is, why is that buzzer going off when I pull the stick back all the time? There's a warning sign, right? But a lot of times when you fly with pilots and you start getting busy in the cockpit and doing different things and they get distracted, guess what? The first thing that goes is the hearing. How many male pilots in here are married? How many times you hear, you don't hear me, you don't listen? Because one of the things when we get occupied, we lose our hearing. There was actually a study done where the FAA looked at distractions in the cockpit versus oral warning on stall warning, and a third of the time the pilot reported never hearing it, even though it was going on. So we've lost a sense of warning once we become stressed in the cockpit, because we start to get tunnel vision, tunnel hearing, and all those kinds of things. And a very simple one would be, well, what's the difference between how a coordinated turn looks on the horizon versus a skidding turn versus a slipping turn? What does it look like? And how many of you actually have done that, other than just being told what it looks like? Raise your hands if you've actually seen the process of skidding, seen the process of slipping, versus the coordinated turn. So not enough of us, right? How many of you have only heard what it looks like? Yeah, and then the rest of you just don't want to raise your hands for anything. Also, stress aviation safety and accident prevention, well, that's what this whole week is all about. Thanks to people like Ron and airports like Caldwell sponsoring these kinds of things and trying to get the word out, because we can't say it often enough, unfortunately.